Well, thank you for being here and for praying this morning, for Dan and the team for leading us in worship and already kind of setting up our theme for today. Last week, Dan talked about the importance of stillness and peace. So I want to start off with a little bit of a little discussion. You may have noticed I like discussion. So we're going to do a few of those today. So I want you to, first of all, just close your eyes for a minute. Think of a place that in your mind is peaceful, it's calm, it's beautiful. Now just picture where you are in that moment with peace, calmness, and beauty. Okay, you can open your eyes. Now, how many of you pictured yourselves somewhere out in nature? That's almost all of us. What is it about nature that just brings that sense of all those things, all those good things? We'd automatically, that's where we go when we're looking for that. That's kind of where we're going to be talking about today. We've been talking about in our series of All Things Reconciled, about becoming a people reconciled to God, to each other, and to creation. And we haven't spent a whole lot of time yet talking about that creation side of things, so that's where we're going to go today. And I want to start off with a little discussion question. Tell each other one of those things. What is one of your favorite spots to spend time in nature? Okay, you've already kind of pictured one. Now tell each other, and let's talk about that for 45 seconds. So I would love to take time and just hear all the different places that you guys have described already, but we probably don't have time. We'd be here till next week. One of the examples for me that I picture is in northern Ontario. Anna's parents used to have a cottage outside of Blind River. And one of those moments for me is just sitting in the evening when it's dark outside, water is just perfectly still, and you can see all the stars. Like you can just look and see how tiny you are underneath, the infiniteness of creation, and sitting on the end of the dock with my guitar, singing the song "Stars" by David Crowder. It just talks about just the beauty of how the God who created these stars, that light is shining back down on us, and He, as a Father, is shining His light of love down on us. And yeah, the smallness of how small we are in the midst of a beautiful creation, and yet how God cares about us, even though we're this little tiny speck. That's a beautiful thing. So we're talking about this part of our vision. We have our vision statement, the vision prayer that we pray, which is ours nationally. That's kind of shared with churches across the country. We should pray the same prayer as an alliance in Canada. But our vision prayer or statement that we've kind of come up with for, what is as Morden Alliance Church? What is our unique role in our community, in our time? That is this becoming reconciled. So this is kind of where we're going today. And really, my goal is very, very simple today, is just to come back and think about what does it mean to just appreciate the creation that God has made and placed us into, and just to see that a bit more like God sees it. So it's one of those weird kind of conversations where it sort of has become a bit of a politicized thing where, if you appreciate creation, that means you're one thing, or if, it's a liberal versus conservative, or, it's really kind of weird how that's tied together. So forget all that. we just want to talk about how God has created a beautiful thing for us and for himself. And so that's what we want to talk about today. There's so many examples we could talk about. In our own little town, we have lots of beautiful spots. Like, where do you go with your kids if you want to just get out in nature and see beautiful things? You go down the street to like Livingston Nature Park. And what is it about walking underneath a canopy of trees over top, wood chips on the ground and bushes and a creek beside you, and you can just spend hours, mucking around in there and discovering little creatures or plants or things. It's something that just draws us. For a few years, Anna's folks had a little place that they were at half the year. We had family in the Bahamas, and so we got the opportunity to visit a couple times. And when you talk about beaches, I don't care about a sandy, plain beach that you just sit on and just kind of, get crispy. That's not my thing. Give me that other side where there's like the coral and the fish, and you just can put a snorkel on, and for hours you can just follow the fish around, and it's just like mesmerizing. I remember doing that one time where there was a cowfish. Have you ever seen what a cowfish is? It's just this little pointy-nosed little blob of a fish, but it's a chameleon. So as you follow it around, it changes colors, and it blends in with all the different things that it's swimming past. And for a half an hour to more, I just was following this one little fish, and it was mind-blowing how beautiful it was. And just like, God made this fish to look like whatever it's around, and it was beautiful. Then there was the scarier side. If you go to the Atlantic side of the island, that's where the water gets deep quick, and you see the big fish. So I remember snorkeling, and this is our first trip when we were ignorant. We didn't know we shouldn't snorkel on the Atlantic side at supper time, because that's when the sharks come out, and that's when the barracudas come out. It was a surreal moment where I was snorkeling, and I'm just enjoying the beauty and the peace, following these big triggerfish. Triggerfish are like triangles that are this tall, like massive fish, and they come in a clump. And so there's like this school of triangles just swimming along. And like, they're as big as I am, and I'm just following them, and they're these majestic things. And I kind of was not paying attention to what else was around me until I look over, and 6 feet over is a barracuda that's longer than I am. And it's just swimming alongside me. I look over at it, it starts going. And I'm just going to very calmly turn this way and just gently swim away, because you have a reverence for creation when you see that it has big teeth. But it was beautiful, and it was calm, and it wasn't actually a terrifying experience. It was like a reverence, like a respect, like, I'm not going to freak out, I'm just going to swim the other way calmly. But man, the things you see in the water that are big and beautiful just gives you a reverence and a sense of awe for what God has made. So why are we drawn to these kinds of places? Like, why, when we think of peace, we think nature? I think it's an echo of the paradise that we've lost. When God made the world, he made a garden. He made it perfect. We were created to enjoy this beautiful place with him and walk in the cool of the evening in the garden with God. And that was the original perfection before things got broken. So there's a part of us that still, we long for that. And creation itself longs for that. So when I think about the way God made the world, the picture that comes to my mind is, the closest thing I can imagine is, imagine if you're a parent, that your kid comes up to you and they've come home from daycare or school, or maybe they just like doodling in the other room, and they come up to you and they present the piece of art that they've created. They've drawn something to them that's like, this is the best they can offer. It's a beautiful masterpiece. They've colored and spent an hour making, or however long, and what do you do with that? You accept it, and you're like, my kid made this. Like, this is their creation. It's beautiful. You put it up on the fridge, you display it, you're proud of it. Well, flip that around. And in God's creation story, we have the whole first chapter of Genesis talking about how God made everything, like this beautiful masterpiece of art that is creation. And then what does he do? He gives it to us. He places us in the middle of it and says, now, take care of this. So when we start thinking about the world around us that way, like, this is God's masterpiece that he gave to us. How are we going to treat that? Like, what are we going to do? We're going to take care of it. Like, we want to appreciate it. So really, that's the main part of my goal this morning, is just for us to think a little bit more about everything around us, the world, the nature, the animals, the plants that he's made, as a beautiful thing that he's given for us to enjoy, and think about how we steward and how we treat that creation. So I'm going to take about 4 or 5 minutes here. We're going to just slowly, and you can close your eyes if you want to picture it in your mind, just read through the creation story. We're going to read through Genesis chapter 1, and just take each little phrase and just let it sink in, and maybe think a little fresh of, okay, what was that like when God spoke and created this, and when he did that, and we made these things? So we're going to, if you want to turn there and read along, or if you just want to close your eyes, whatever helps you to kind of just picture it, we're going to read it together. First words of the Bible say this: in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness night. And evening passed, and morning came, marking the first day. He wasn't in a hurry. The first day, it's just one thing, just light. Then God said, "Let there be a space between the waters, to separate the waters of the heavens from the waters of the earth." And that is what happened. God made this space to separate the waters of the earth from the waters of the heaven. And God called the space sky. And evening passed, and morning came, marking the second day. Then God said, "Let the waters beneath the sky flow together into one place, so dry ground may appear." And that is what happened. God called the dry ground land, and the waters seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the land sprout with vegetation, every sort of seed-bearing plant, and trees that grow seed-bearing fruit. These seeds will then produce the kinds of plants and trees from which they came." And that is what happened. The land produced vegetation, all sorts of seed-bearing plants and trees with seed-bearing fruit. Their seeds produced plants and trees of the same kind. And God saw that it was good. And evening passed, and morning came, marking the third day. Then God said, "Let lights appear in the sky to separate the day from the night. Let them be signs to mark the seasons, days, and years. Let these lights in the sky shine down on the earth." And that is what happened. God made 2 great lights, the larger one to govern the day, and the smaller one to govern the night. He also made the stars. Just a side note, no biggie, just stars. Just a picture of that. God set these lights in the sky to light the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And evening passed, and morning came, marking the 4th day. Then God said, "Let the waters swarm with fish and other life. Let the skies be filled with birds of every kind." So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that scurries and swarms in the water, and every sort of bird, each producing offspring of the same kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply. Let the fish fill the seas, let the birds multiply on the earth." And evening passed and morning came, marking the fifth day. Then God said, "Let the earth produce every sort of animal, each producing offspring of the same kind, livestock, small animals that scurry along the ground, and wild animals." And that's what happened. God made all sorts of wild animals, livestock, and small animals, each able to produce offspring of the same kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make human beings in our image, to be like us. They will reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, all the wild animals on the earth, and the small animals that scurry along the ground." So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. Then God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and govern it. Reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the animals that scurry along the ground." Then God said, "Look, I've given you every seed-bearing plant throughout the earth and all the fruit trees for your food. And I've given every green plant as food for the wild animals, the birds in the sky, and the small animals that scurry along the ground, everything that has life." And that's what happened. Then God looked over all he had made, and he saw that it was very good. And evening passed, and morning came, marking the sixth day. And that's the end of that chapter. So all these things God made, and he gave us the job of governing them. Now, there was no sin yet. Nothing was broken. There was no death. And we were supposed to govern and reign over these things. Now, so at this point, what does that mean? That doesn't mean kill and eat. That doesn't happen until later. So there's a job that he gave us to be in this beautiful place, taking care of it. There's a quote by Michael Abate. It says, "At every step, God looked at what he had created and declared, 'It is good.' It doesn't quite translate, but the original Hebrew word there is closer in meaning to inarguably perfect in every way. In fact, when he was completely finished, God looked again at the sum total of all he had made and said, 'It is very good.' It wasn't just inarguably perfect. Every quality about it was extremely perfect." So that's God's picture that he paints, that he put us into and kind of gives us, in a sense, as a gift to govern and to reign. That was our first job description. Be gardeners, basically. Why so many people are drawn to gardening. Like Anna has become pretty passionate about plants in the last several years, and sometimes I was like, "Well, what's the big deal about it?" Well, there's something about seeing that life, that growing, that was our first job, to be caretakers of creation. But it didn't last very long, and we messed it up. Sin came in. We wanted to be more than God said we should be in this. We wanted to be God and control our own destiny, and so the serpent comes and tricks Adam and Eve, and the curse brings things that break not only our relationship with God, but breaks creation itself. In Genesis 3, we read, "And to the man he said, 'Since you listened to your wife and ate from the tree whose fruit I commanded you not to eat, the ground is cursed because of you. All your life you will struggle to scratch a living from it. It will grow thorns and thistles for you, though you will eat of its grains. By the sweat of your brow you will have the food to eat until you return to the ground from which you were made. For you were made from dust, and to dust you will return.'" So this perfection that God created and put us into is now broken. Now the whole world is actually suffering. Relationships are broken not just between us and God, but between us and the ground that we work to provide food. And I was thinking about, what does it mean to be reconciled to creation? So we talk about being reconciled to God, we can sort of, we talk about that a lot at church. Being reconciled to each other, forgiving, we talk a fair bit about that. But I was thinking, what does it mean to be reconciled to creation? Like, that's a bit more confusing. That doesn't come as clearly as a picture to our mind. And so I was kind of mulling this over, and I was thinking that when relationships get broken, usually it's a result of selfishness, where one person ends up using the other for their own gain instead of loving and caring for that person as they would for themselves. And it's actually not that different between us and creation. I was thinking, if we see creation as something to use and to make us wealthy, or to promote our own interests as something to just take from, then we're going to have that same brokenness with creation. So if we were to be reconciled with creation as we would with a person, like if we were reconciled with a person, in my mind that looks like they now feel not like we're using them, but they now feel loved and like we have their best interest at heart. So to be reconciled with someone where a relationship may have been broken, it would be reconciliation in my mind when they now feel like you actually want the best for them. You're now caring as opposed to using. So I think it's the same thing with creation. If we see the world around us as something that we want to take care of and leave better than we found it, where it's not just, how can I make this work for me the best, but how can I take care of the world around me, then now we've switched to an attitude of reconciliation. So one little example that comes to mind is back in the Bahamas, there was a little walk we had to take to the beach. It was about a 5-minute walk down these little kind of undeveloped areas with bushes and things, and it's this beautiful place. It was actually a pretty remote little island, just a sliver of dirt in the ocean, where you could walk to either side. It's just a half-mile wide, but in that quarter mile that we'd walk from the middle to the one beach, there would be garbage everywhere. And you're thinking, man, we just, this was like this amazing thing that we got to come to this place, and now we're here, and there's just like bottles and bags and just junk on the whole walk to this beautiful ocean. It's like, this does not make sense. Do people not care about this beautiful place that they're in? And so we just made it a habit of, I take a plastic bag with me, and we just pick up a little bit of stuff. And after a couple of days of doing this, now our walk to the beach was beautiful. Like, you weren't distracted by all the junk and the garbage that was there. So it didn't actually take very much to just leave that little spot better than we found it. And we had a neighbor on 8th Street that you may have seen who walks for years. He walks around Morden with a plastic bag in his hand, and he picks up garbage every single day. So I don't know if he still does this, but for years. And so that's an inspiration to me. Is like, this is someone who just takes a little bit out of their day every day to do something good and leave their area better than they found it. That's being reconciled to your environment. Now, some would argue, well, what's the point? The world's going to burn anyway, and it's all going to be destroyed, so why does it matter? Well, that's a whole nother talk. We don't have time to talk about the different viewpoints in that, but there's a great little quote that Randy Alcorn talks about in this introduction to the other quote I just mentioned, in a book called Gardening Eden by Michael Abate. And Randy Alcorn says, "It makes no sense to say that because the earth will be destroyed, therefore we shouldn't take good care of it. Do we argue that because our bodies will be destroyed, that we shouldn't take good care of them?" So it just doesn't make sense. Like, if we cared about something, well, if we follow the same logic and said, well, the earth's just going to be whatever your view is, about the future of heaven and earth, that doesn't matter, it's all going to burn up anyway. Well, then there'd be no point in trying to be healthy in our bodies either, because they're going to die. So, get it over with, and it's just all going to happen anyway. There's no point. Well, no, we don't do that. Our bodies are the temple of God. He's given to us to take care of, and same with his creation. And so anyway, this week, as I was kind of thinking about this topic, I ended up having lunch with a friend who mentioned this book that some of these quotes were coming from, and his life is a perfect example of all this stuff. He lives in a yurt, has no electricity. They have little solar panels that they use to power their fridge, and they chop wood for their firewood, and they have bees, and they harvest berries off their little property, and it's like the epitome of all the things that we could be inspired to do. That's how their little family lives. And they've got 2 little kids living in this yurt. So it's a family of 4, and it's cool. And just to hear the stories that he has about how you can go off into the bush and harvest these tea leaves, and then they make tea, and they have fresh, beautiful, healthy tea that they just picked out of the ground and made. It's inspirational. And then I share that with someone else, and I think Bonnie said she would probably never allow me to pull her up here to give an example, but she said she has learned how to make thistle soup. And so I was like, that's cool. And she said, it's great. It's delicious. You can harvest these thistles, which we think of as a weed, and you can make soup out of it. And it tastes good, and it's probably really healthy. So, all these things that we see around us that we think of as nuisances are actually a gift. Dandelions. I walked to church this morning, and it's the time of season where the dandelions aren't quite ugly yet. And looking around, in our neighborhood, we've kind of given up. We've realized it's not going to happen. I tried for a few years digging dandelions, and I gave up. But I looked at the yards as I'm walking by the few blocks to church this morning, and they're like, these things are beautiful right now. It's, but this is also like the first food for the bees, and they're actually good. Like, you can actually just, as long as you know it's not been sprayed, you can just pick a dandelion flower and eat it. It tastes good. You can take the roots of it, and you can make, now I wouldn't say this is delicious as Honduran coffee, but you can make coffee out of dandelion roots. I tried it a while ago. It's actually pretty good. You can make dandelion tea. So this thing that we just think, dandelions, actually has all sorts of benefits. There's a story that I read a while ago where this little community in Europe somewhere has no cancer. It's an anomaly if someone in their community has cancer. It's just it's not a thing in their town. And what they drink all the time is dandelion tea. They just use dandelions in all their stuff. So it's So, not trying to make any big exclamation points there, other than just the idea that maybe the things that God's given us and put right around us, right within arm's reach, might actually be for a purpose. Maybe God's put what we need right around us. So little stories like that are inspirational. And even as I talked with people around here this morning, we were talking about nature and taking trips, seeing sequoia trees, and just the beautiful things that we see. It's all to do with our attitude. So those are the 2 things that I wanted to talk about, is changing our attitude and seeing creation around us as a gift, and then some action. What do we do? We want this series to be a practical application of, now, how do we do this? How do we act as a reconciled people to creation, to God, to others? So I wanted to just throw out a bunch of ideas and how we can do that. So one of the ones that I love doing is fixing things. We have a strong philosophy in our house that, and Anna has a lot to do with this because she grew up in Guelph. Guelph is known as the guinea pig city of Canada, where anything hippie, granola, environmental, all starts in Guelph. That's where composting bins for towns, I think, started, and recycling and anything like that. They're an agricultural university town, so this is where the crunchy people go. Is they all come or start in Guelph at some point. So she grew up there, so I can't get away from it. But I enjoy it. So instead of tossing something out, we had a scale that Anna's brother gave us 12, 15 years ago, used at the time when they moved away, and it finally died the other day. And he's like, okay, it's a little digital scale, but it's this big hunk of plastic. So I pulled it all apart, checked it, and normally I can fix stuff, a little loose wire or something, or just a little thing that needs to be replaced. This time I tried, it was just dead. But I had to check that before we tossed it. It's like, okay, can we breathe new life into this? Is it something that we can make use of? It saves money, but it also saves that piece of plastic living in a pile of dirt for 1,000 or multiple thousands of years. So it's not always possible, but we can try. We can see if we can fix things. I almost brought it up here, but there is a thing that Anna hates, and it's this most beautiful thing in it's part of my story, is this Panasonic boombox from 1992, and it looks like a spaceship. It's this big oval with a motorized top. You guys know what I'm talking about? Oh, that was like the boombox. And I found a used one when I was in high school in 1992, and it was like, at the time, I think I paid like $350 for it. It was like, that was a lot for a used boombox back then. This was quality. And it still is, because I'm still using it. And Anna hates that it still exists in our house, but it's awesome. But I had that at university, and it filled that gym while we were playing 21. It had water poured into the top of it twice, because I lived in the basement at my parents' house and right below the kitchen. And water poured down into it and destroyed the tape deck, and the dual cassette deck. And it destroyed the CD player, but I tipped it over and dried it out and cleaned it out and got it salvaged. But the speakers still work, and it has an aux in, so I can hook up Bluetooth to it, and it's in this millennium, and it's still kicking strong, and it sounds great. So, okay, Anna says keep moving. Point is, sometimes if you quality, it's worth fixing. It's worth, why replace it and have something that's going to fill a dumpster or a landfill? Now you have to pay for somewhere to build something, to replace it, to package it and all this stuff, to ship it, to send the fuel, to ship it across the world, to put it in a box, which you're going to toss out, and now you have a fresh thing, and you've tossed out all this other stuff in the process. Anyway, I'll move on. A couple of years ago, we had a massive drought in Morden. You probably all remember what we had to do to save water. Well, people were doing all sorts of creative things, and we actually found that as oh yeah, bring it on, we're going to think of ideas here. So here's a couple of things that we did. We would save our bath water, and because the bathtub was on the second floor, you'd stick a hose in that. You bring it down to your plants or your rain barrel in the front yard to water all your plants with, and you just suck on it a little bit to get it going, and you can fill up your rain barrel, and you can use your bath water to water your plants. Just don't swallow it. But we were like, yeah, this is kind of cool. Not something you want to continue all the time, but in a drought situation and you can't water your plants, save your bath water. And one of the things that, when you run the hot water, if you're far away from the hot water tank, it takes, a minute for the hot water to come, but all the cold water goes through first. Well, we started taking a bucket and filling that cold water into the bucket until the hot water was there, and we'd save that for flushing a toilet. And then you'd have your hot water ready for your shower. So we still do that. Drought's been over for a couple of years. We still have a bucket in our bathroom that we use to put the cold water, or to run the water until it gets warm. And we're like, oh, well, it saves a couple of bucks and it saves some water. So I might be a little bit weird in that way, but it's just little things that, in a crisis kind of situation you have to do, but, you develop a habit, maybe there's something you can continue doing. So we're going to go to another discussion question. So there's some of the things that we've tried. What kind of things have you tried, or maybe could you try to become a better steward of resources that maybe you end up not using or not wasting as much? So let's talk about that. Tell someone else an idea that comes to mind. What's a way that you could steward the resources around you a little better? Let's talk about that. This is great. I don't want to actually feel like stopping you guys. We're like going on here because these are practical things. So yeah, if you need to write them down, or if saying them out loud helps you remember these ideas and put them into practice, that's important. That's what we need to do, because if we don't internalize them and actually do something with it, then there's no point in talking about all these things. So to wrap things up, we want to change our attitude. How do we think about creation? Is it something for us to use, or is it something for us to appreciate, enjoy, and leave better than we found it? And then what kind of action steps can we take? How can we use less? How can we fix things and think about reusing them instead of just tossing things away in our kind of disposable society? And how can we appreciate those things? When we think about the things that we use, the food we eat, or all these spaces that we enjoy as gifts from a loving Father, we treat them differently. We appreciate everything more. We try not to waste it. We take care of it, and we appreciate what we've been given. So I'm going to invite the band up to close us with another song of worship. And as we go from here this morning, as we think of appreciating the world, maybe take a walk today. As I walked to church this morning, I saw beautiful dandelions. I saw grackles with their shiny purple heads, and like, how do they look that way? It's like they got this black matte body with this shiny, beautiful head, and they were just playing. It's like creation plays around us. It's, it enjoys itself. When we enjoy the beautiful creation. And then I walked past the creek and saw a mallard and its baby, swimming along the creek. Things that we can do if we just take the time to slow down and just look around us, not just smell the flowers, but look at all the beautiful things that are around us. So to wrap it up, we're going to do our ending a little bit different than we often do. We're going to kind of officially, I'll kind of close us off here, and the band will play a song, and then we're going to make the room just kind of a space for lingering and prayer. And so if you want to, after the song, you're welcome to go out and chat in the lobby and grab some coffee and enjoy that space. But if you do want to visit, let's do that in the lobby. And we're going to make this room and the prayer room, the new space, the old library there, the new prayer room, we're going to keep these as just spaces for just sitting with God. The band might just keep playing, and we can linger, pray with each other. There will be a prayer team available here and the prayer room. And so there's no need to rush off. Maybe there's something you just want to sit in, take the time to do that. So after the song, you're free to go, or you're free to stay. But why don't I just pray as we move into that space. Father, thank you for being a good Father who loves to give beautiful, good gifts to his children. The world around us that you created, so intricate, so huge, and such tiny details. They're all woven together amazingly. As we go into our day and our week, I pray that you just open our eyes to see the beauty of what you've made, to appreciate it, to see it as a gift from you, because you love us. You wanted to put us in a beautiful place. Help us to do well at taking care of it and appreciating what you've given us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Feel free to stay seated or stand if you like to worship. And like Henry said, when the song is done, you're free to go this morning.
In the darkness we were waiting, without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt.
this place of prayer. If you'd like some prayer, you can come up to the front or stay in your seat and pray with others around you this morning. See you back here next week.